Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new TEAM therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda.
Hello, David. And, and welcome everyone to episode 232. And we're going to start off with another announcement because we're just so excited to announce a Feeling Great book club for anyone in the world supporting TEAM in reading and learning from David Burns' powerful and healing new book, Feeling Great, with questions and answers, exercises, and discussions in large and small groups. The Feeling Great book club is going to meet online for an hour at a time for 16 weeks on Wednesdays, starting March 17th. Which will be a week after this podcast is published. And it's going to meet at 2 times on Wednesdays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific time, which should allow for fairly reasonable hours from anywhere in the world. But we want to make a note that this group is intended to provide education. It's not a therapy or treatment group. The cost is only $8 per session to be paid in advance, but people will be able to pay whatever they can comfortably afford, and no one is going to be turned away for lack of finances. The group is going to be primarily led by Brandon Vance, who is just a marvelous level 4 team therapy trainer and psychiatrist who has studied with David since 2011. And so in order to register for this Feeling Great book club, please go to www.feelinggreattherapycenter.com/book club to find out more. Book-club to find out more and to register. I'll just say that one more time. www.feelinggreattherapycenter.com/book club and the book-club to find out more and to register.
And I might add that Brandon is a really good guy. He's brilliant. He has a background in philosophy. He's a psychiatrist. He's extraordinarily well-trained, but he's got a heart of gold and brain of Einstein, and he's kind and compassionate, and he did a lot of editing for me. I think he went through the Feeling Great book 3 times and made all kinds of helpful suggestions and comments. So this is going to be a great experience for any of you, and we have so many workshops for mental health professionals, and I've been wanting to see more for the general public because most of our fans and most of you who are listening are not mental health professionals, although many of you are. And so here's something for you. There's already a Feeling Great book club in New York with about, I think, 40 or even more therapists. And they're having great times. And so I think this is going to be really, really fun for people.
Yeah, because this is for non-therapists.
Yeah. This is for everybody.
Yeah, for everyone. Cool. And not only, and Brandon is musical and creative, and he teaches with so much fun and vim and vigor.
Yep.
But David, you have some upcoming virtual workshops too.
Yeah, I haven't been promoting them on the web, on our podcast, or even on my blogs and stuff. I've kind of forgot about them. One I've promoted a little bit is the Self-Defeating Beliefs workshop on February 28th with Jill Levitt. And that one already has a huge attendance. So if you want to register, move fast because it may sell out. The reason the size is limited, even though it's a virtual workshop, is because we have small breakout groups for you to practice these cool techniques throughout the day. And you'll learn how to help yourself and your patients as well overcome self-defeating beliefs like perfectionism, perceived perfectionism, approval addiction, love addiction, achievement addiction, submissiveness, and more. And you'll learn the best techniques for dealing with self-defeating beliefs, how to identify them, how to modify them. And you'll learn some new techniques as well. As it turns out, there's not one but three completely different ways to use the feared fantasy techniques, and we'll teach all three of those and tons of other techniques as well. Whenever I do a podcast with Rhonda, it's always a peak experience because of the joy, the electricity, the spirit you bring to podcasts. And when I teach a workshop with Jill, it's always a joy as well, because Jill is compassionate and kind. She's one of the best teachers, I think, in the world. She's brilliant. She just brings it all together. Everybody loves her. So you'll have fun, you'll laugh, you might cry a little at this workshop, but we hope you can join us. So you just go to well, you can find these all on my website on the upcoming events and the resources. Go to feelinggood.com. There's a resources tab, and under that you can click on upcoming workshop schedule, and then you'll find descriptions and links. But I'll also put the links for registration in the show notes for this podcast. Okay.
Well, it looks like you're going to be teaching a class once a month for the next 3 months.
Who is?
You are. So you're teaching that class in February, and you're teaching another class in March. On March 24th,
yeah.
Aren't you teaching another class?
Well, yeah, I've got a lot of stuff coming up. That's what I didn't realize. On March 24th, 2021, I'm doing Feeling Great, a new high-speed treatment for depression and anxiety. That's a one-day workshop for mental health professionals, sponsored by my dear colleague Jack Hiroshi, who's from Vancouver, and I've done tons of Canadian workshops for him. So, but this is open to people from Canada, U.S., all over the world. So that's March 24th, 2021. That's a full-day workshop on the techniques, really, in the Feeling Great book, how to use these techniques with your clients. And then a new type of workshop on April 7th, 2021. Again, it'll be a half-day workshop for mental health professionals, although I suspect the general public could sneak in if you're curious. I'm going to do a live therapy demonstration with a volunteer from the audience, and that'll take about 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours with Q&A, and then I'll have some exercises for you to do to cement your learning, like what did you learn about the T=, testing in the live demonstration? What are the take-home messages? How about the E= empathy? What are the ways to really get great empathy with people? What are the common empathy errors that I myself often make, as Rhonda knows very well? And then what is the A, the assessment of resistance? Did I melt away the resistance of the participant? And how important is resistance? And what errors do therapists make in trying to deal with therapeutic resistance? And then the M= methods. What methods did we use to crush this individual's negative thoughts? If you think you might want to be the volunteer for that, but by the way, and you register for it, and you're a mental health professional, let me know, because I'll need to find someone who will volunteer to be the so-called patient in that workshop. And so that's a new kind of workshop, and I think it'll be really rewarding. Challenging and scary for me, because I'm doing like a high wire act without a safety net. When I treat someone live, you never know what's going to happen. But I've done them so many times in conferences, and they're generally just a fantastic experience.
Mm-hmm. Will you have a co-therapist like Jill or Mike Christensen?
I was wondering about that, to see if Jill would be interested, see if Mike would be interested. It's always way better with a co-therapist. I think I'll contact Mike
since he's
away
Canadian
and ask him, because it's just so great to have a co-therapist for a live demo.
Great. Okay, so upcoming classes on February 28th, March 24th, or April 7th, and you can find them all on Dr. Burns' website, feelinggood.com. Okay, well, this is another Ask David, so let's jump in.
Did we have any endorsements?
Sure. Well, we've talked for quite a while, so let me just do a short one.
Okay, yeah.
This is somebody who just listened to episode 213, which was on from feeling good to feeling great. And this is somebody who sent greetings from Turkey. And he wrote, or she wrote, "Your books are amazing. You're helping people from all over the world."
Yes,
which
thank
is
you.
kind of short and sweet. But, it's cool to hear that people from Turkey are listening.
Yeah, there's that for some reason, my books are very popular in Turkey. I'm not quite sure why, but I've had so many wonderful comments from people in Turkey live when I've presented live, like at the Evolution Conference and, big conferences. And also I get emails all the time from people in Turkey. So thanks for that.
Yeah, and let me just read a really quick one about a podcast we just did, 227, which was on Echoes of Enlightenment, where Michael talked about his own experience. And somebody wrote, "At first, Dr. Michael experienced knowing, and he was then able to help his own patients. And then he became a patient himself and experienced understanding. Then the good fellow experienced Satori. The Buddha would be one with him. Cheers."
That's cool. It's neat that
so cool.
Because Michael really did experience a kind of an enlightenment, and I don't even know. Do you know what Satori is? Your husband probably knows if you
My
don't.
husband does. I should have looked it up before I.
I asked Melanie, and she didn't know. My wife, Satori. It sounds so exciting.
I think it means kind of sudden enlightenment. Like there's a Buddhist expression that talks about all the roads lead to Satori.
Oh,
not all roads, but the road that leads to Satori is like a sudden enlightenment.
Oh, well, that's what we're trying to do in team therapy is sudden enlightenment. So maybe we can make a little enlightenment happen today.
Okay, let's jump in and try it. Okay, so this is a question from Brian who wrote, "Can negative thoughts lead to high blood pressure?" And then he actually did a test about himself.
Yeah. My answer to it, I'm not an expert on cardiology, although I am a medical doctor and certainly at least at one time knew how to take people's blood pressure and interpret it. But I'm not sure that negative thoughts can lead to, chronically elevated blood pressure, like that for which you need treatment. But I've always known that in the short term, some people get really anxious before they have their blood pressure taken. And so it's real high. And then the doctor will have them, do deep breathing and close your eyes and relax and come back and take it again 5 minutes later. And then it's often down to normal. And so that would be some proof that in the short term, if negative thoughts can be making you feel anxious or angry or agitated, they could certainly lead to high blood pressure. And then I told him to do an experiment and check it out. And can you tell us what happened there?
Yeah, Brian wrote that when he was having stressful thoughts about his family, he checked his blood pressure and it was way up. So he thought having stressful thoughts did increase his blood pressure. And then you asked him, you can also see if changing those thoughts and feelings leads to a reduction in your blood pressure. And he wrote you, well, do you want to say what happened after he...
No, you do. You sound good.
Okay, so then he changed his thoughts and he wrote, "Dr. Burns, I did. I changed my thoughts and my blood pressure lowered, my stress lowered, and so did my blood pressure. Yay."
Yeah, way to go, Brian. Kudos for Brian. Now, is this our Brian who we're going to feature on an upcoming podcast on
I don't know.
Marital issues and anger and stuff like that?
I don't know.
I suspect it might.
Do you think it is?
Be, yes. And I'm looking forward to that. We're going to be recording that shortly, like in a week or two. And this is a man who had written me about how do you deal with anger and, in your marriage and your family system. And I was so excited to work with him again, not as a real patient, but just, with the relationship journal and the techniques and feeling good together and kind of beating up on him when he wasn't using the disarming technique. And, really trying to shape his behavior as fast as possible. And he was a really good egg. and a really brilliant guy. And he kept sending me little videos of his progress and stuff, and really apparently turned his marriage around completely. And so he wants to come on a podcast and talk about it. And also how what he learned ties in with his religious beliefs, which is another cool angle. So I think I have a hunch it's the same Brian.
Nice. Well, this is kind of a follow-up question that Jim asked you about panic attacks. Dear Dr. Burns, I recently bought copies of Feeling Good, Feeling Great, and the Feeling Good Handbook, and studying them has been remarkably helpful so far. Thank you for writing them. I hope this is not too forward, but I'm struggling with one immediate difficulty. Within the past 2 weeks, I have had 2 panic attacks that brought on heart palpitations, and it's created a cycle of anxiety that I can't seem to break. My central issue is that I can't seem to isolate a thought that brings on the initial feelings of worry, followed by flushing of my face and then skipped heartbeats. The first attack happened in the car after visiting a store, and the second happened while waiting online at a store. I have seen my cardiologist, and so far all my blood work and EKGs have come back normal. Whatever help you can give or resources you can share would be sincerely appreciated. Thank you, Jim.
Great. Well, a great question. And by the way, for a specific reference on panic attacks is my book called When Panic Attacks. And you can get it on Amazon. It's a paperback, and it has all kinds of techniques for dealing with panic attacks. There's 3 points that I want to make. That was one of them. The second point is that you say you're having trouble knowing what your negative thoughts are. You can just make up some negative thoughts. You can draw a cartoon figure and put a bubble above its head. And this is a fellow who was at a grocery store, wherever you were, when you were having your panic attack, and just write some words up there that'll explain why this cartoon figure is freaking out. Just make up some negative thoughts. And I suspect they'll be very similar, if not identical, to your own negative thoughts. But just make some up. Anything will do. When people are having panic attacks, the types of negative thoughts always involve some impending catastrophe. One thought is, I'm about to die, like my windpipe is closing off, or I'm going to have a heart attack, and you're hyperventilating, and you feel like you can't breathe, and you get tightness in your chest. That's one pattern. Another pattern that a lot of people with panic attacks have is the fear of going crazy. You're dizzy and you're at a grocery store and you think, oh, what if I freak out and crack up in front of all of these people? That's another very common source of panic attacks, that thought. Other people have had panic attacks, have the thought, I might pee in my pants. And so people like that are constantly, if they're out in public, they make sure there's a restroom right nearby. They keep going into the restroom to see if they have to pee. I had one fellow who was had panic attacks because of his fear that he might poo in his pants in public. But it's generally some catastrophic loss of control. The treatment for any type of anxiety is really, there's 4 models that I use. And some of them you've heard of and some of them you probably haven't. But there's certainly the cognitive model that panic, like all negative feelings, unhealthy negative feelings, is caused by distorted thoughts. And the moment you crush those thoughts and prove to yourself that they're not true, in that instant you'll recover. Like if you're having panic attacks and you're afraid of going crazy, well, then I have the patients try to go crazy in my office. They try, and it terrifies them because they think they will go crazy. And I have them run around and babble incoherently and roll around on the floor. And when they discover they can't go crazy, no matter how hard they try, it generally one and done. It takes about 5 minutes, and most patients are cured. Or if you think you're about to die, I have patients do strenuous aerobic exercises in the office, or at home have them run up and down stairs. If they think they're going to die of a heart attack, I say, see if you can bring on a heart attack. Run up and down the stairs. And you think, well, that's dangerous, but it's not, because these people have all been to multiple cardiologists or psychiatrists. Am I going to go crazy? Is my heart okay? It's just distorted thoughts. And then another model, of course, is the motivational model. Are you willing to do these experiments and confront your fears if I agree to work with you? Some patients say, no, I just want to talk about my childhood. And then I say, okay, great, I'm not the therapist you're looking for. But God bless you. And if you ever change your mind and just want a quick, irreversible cure, I'm your guy, and you're welcome back anytime. And then the fourth model is the hidden emotion model. And I write about that in the book, When Panic Attacks. And it's a fantastic model. And I'd say a good 70 to 80% of panic attack patients, maybe even more, there's something that's bugging you, Jim, in all likelihood. And it's in the here and now. And the reason, but you're not bringing it to conscious awareness because you're too nice. Almost all panic attack patients, or all anxiety patients, are excessively nice. Niceness is one of the main causes of anxiety. And what it means is you might be ticked off at somebody or upset about something that you're not dealing with, and you sweep it under the carpet, and then it comes out indirectly as panic attacks that distract you from the real problem that's bugging you, and you focus on your symptoms. And so when I'm working with patients, and you can do this yourself if you read the chapter in When Panic Attacks on the hidden emotion technique, is ask yourself, am I upset with my partner, with a family member, with a colleague, with my job, with my work, with my schooling? Is there something I want that I think I shouldn't want? Am I angry and I think I shouldn't be angry? It's that suppression of emotions. And if you can bring the conflict to conscious awareness and then deal with it, solve the problem, express your feelings, do something about it, your symptoms will often vanish entirely. So that's the quick overview. And When Panic Attacks is a great
you only said
resource.
three.
Huh?
You only said three. You said cognitive model, motivational model, and hidden emotion model.
And the exposure model.
And the exposure, yeah.
Yeah, to, like, if you think you're, about to go crazy, then you have to
Force yourself
confront
to go,
the fear, confront the monster and try to go crazy and see if the monster has teeth. And that's also goes back to the Buddha and the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It's one of the key principles of Buddhism. And then when you do that, you'll discover the monster has no teeth. And often at the moment of recovery, my patients have broken into uncontrollable laughter when they see that their suffering has been the result of a cosmic joke, and that there is no monster.
Actually, I want to stay with this panic attack question and just pivot a little bit. Mm-hmm. What if you're a person, because we haven't really talked about COVID for a long time. What if you're a person who is really panicked about getting COVID, and that has effectively shut your life down? There's realistic, so they don't want to leave their house. They don't want to meet people even in the most safest way with masks or socially distanced, and they're feeling scared and isolated and lonely and depressed, but they're also feeling paralyzed to even challenge their fear of getting COVID.
Yeah. Now I have a question first. Is this a made-up problem or someone real?
No, this is someone real.
Someone, a patient of yours? Or?
It's a patient of mine, yeah.
Oh, I see. Well, I would just work with TEAM. I don't have formulas.
But there's no way of there's no type of exposure that could work.
Well, you're getting into methods, and I'm still at testing and then empathy and assessment of resistance. Uh-huh. What's the cause of all therapeutic failure, Rhonda?
Trying to help the person?
Yeah, and not dealing with the resistance. And I would want to talk to the person. First, I'd see if I can get an A+ on empathy, because I wouldn't even try to help or even deal with resistance until I'm getting an A+ on empathy. And then once I'm getting an A+ on empathy, I would do the invitation question. Mm-hmm. The first step of the assessment of resistance. So how would the invitation question go for this patient, Rhonda?
I mean, it could really be simple. Like, is this something that you want to work on?
Yeah,
And are you ready to do the work that you need to do in order to overcome this?
Yeah, that's outcome resistance and process resistance right there. Yeah, and what kind of help would you be looking for? If a miracle happened in today's session, what would happen? And then would you be willing to confront your fears, to do what's necessary to be cured? And again, the person could, again, there's 4 models. They could be having the hidden emotion phenomenon going on. But they have to decide, how anxious do you want to be on a 0 to 100? If you're 90%, well, that's going to give you a high margin of safety, and stay at home all the time and be terrified. But do you need 90% anxiety? How anxious would you like to be if we had a magic dial? But also to find out what's going on in that patient's life, because often, as I say, there's a hidden problem that the patient isn't telling you about, and that's a part of it too. The resistance part and the hidden emotion part are incredibly important. I don't know if that's helpful to you.
No, super helpful.
Oh, good.
Thanks. I like going over those 4 methods. I mean, because lots of times, and we had talked about this before, people think, oh, only do exposure. And then if exposure doesn't work, they're hopeless. Somebody wrote us about that a while ago.
Yeah.
And there's more than just one way of approaching these issues.
Yeah. I go with all pistons blazing. I don't throw methods at people. I try to work with them systematically. And if you want a good outcome with an anxious patient, you've got to be able to use all 4 models and, find out what the person wants and what it would be worth to them if you agreed to deliver the goods, so to speak. Are they willing to pay the price, which is generally, confronting the fears. But the devil, as you know, is in the details.
Right. Okay, let's zoom off to the next question from Adam. And he wrote, shouldn't we get rid of the terms positive thoughts and self-defeating beliefs? In details, he writes, I have a few questions about some of the semantics on the daily mood log and the self-defeating beliefs list. First of all, on the daily mood log, there is a section for positive thoughts. My understanding is that the goal isn't necessary to think positively, but instead to correct distortions so that the person is thinking realistically. I'm wondering, what would you think about calling that column realistic thoughts instead of positive thoughts? I'm going to ask you that first, and then we'll go to the second one.
Oh, okay. Well, the answer to the second one will be the same as the answer to the first one, is that for decades people have said, well, why don't you change it to this, and why don't you change it to that? Like for a long time, people were saying you shouldn't use the word psychotherapy homework because it turns people off. Call them self-help assignments. But that did no good whatsoever. It's psychotherapy homework is what it is, and if you call it that, and if people resist, that's good. And then I can say to them, maybe this isn't the type of therapy you're looking for, because psychotherapy homework would be required if you want help with the kind of therapy that I'm offering. And that solution worked very well. When Beck started out with cognitive therapy, he always had big intellectual names for things, like he called the negative thoughts automatic thoughts, and he called what I now call positive thoughts rational responses. Well, those words turned people off too. At my hospital in Philadelphia was an inner city hospital, and most of our people hadn't graduated, or many of them, from the 5th grade. And they had very few resources, and they found these terms like automatic thoughts. Well, that's way beyond their pay grade. And rational responses sound like the most boring thing in the world, some rational thing for intellectuals who don't know how to feel emotions.
Mm-hmm. And it seems also a little condescending.
Yeah, definitely. But the people at my hospital, which was Presbyterian Medical Center at the time, they knew what a positive thought was, and they knew what a negative thought was. And that worked for them. And I try to use simple language at the 5th grade level that works for people. And But I think it's great that you're thinking, Adam, about words and the meaning of words, because words, of course, can be very, very, very powerful. But I try to err always on the side of simple words and explaining things, clearly. But any word you choose will have a host of advantages and a host of disadvantages. You can't find the perfect words. But you can become a skillful, compassionate therapist who can speak with patients in a direct and human and compassionate way that will be exciting to them and helpful to them and lead them from suffering to recovery.
Mm. Oh, that's nice. But the second thing he said, I'm going to read anyway, even though you did correctly, you did answer it. And he wrote, one of my favorite tools that I've used both for myself and for my clients is the list of self-defeating beliefs. Often when I use the downward arrow technique with the client, it leads to one of these beliefs, and it is really helpful to have clients identify the beliefs on their own. With that being said, one thing that I personally feel some reservation about is calling beliefs self-defeating. The side effect of that protection that they get from the thought of self-defeating, the side effect of that is protection that they get from the self-defeating part. I'm kind of editing it as I go along. I might not be editing it correctly, but it's interesting that he's bringing up the self-defeating beliefs in the downward arrow. And I think there's a lot of people that have questions about self-defeating beliefs, like what are they and how do they relate to negative thoughts? And if you change your self-defeating belief, does that lead to a positive thought? And all of those kinds of questions are going to be answered, right? In your class on February 28th.
Yeah, come to our workshop with Jill, and we'll give you a full day on self-defeating beliefs. But this is the same answer as the other. There's a long history to all of these terms. For example, Albert Ellis preceded Aaron Beck by 10 years, and he wrote about them in the 1950s, and he called them irrational beliefs. And, he would tirade against his patients for having these irrational beliefs, like, where is it written that the world should be the way you want it to be, and things like that. And his list was an excellent. I think he had 10 irrational beliefs that are the cause of most human misery. But again, irrational beliefs, as you pointed out, Rhonda, has a kind of a pejorative feel to it. And Ellis's therapeutic style was kind of a put-down style, like kind of haranguing people for being so irrational. The irrationality that makes us angry, that makes us anxious, makes us depressed. And he had a great point, but again, it was kind of off-putting to some people. Beck was the one who came up with self-defeating beliefs, and I love that term. That's a much softer term, and I've never had a patient object to it. But this question asker named Adam is absolutely right. These things aren't purely good or evil. They have a healthy side, and that's what we bring out in positive reframing. If you're beating up on yourself perfectionistically, what does that show about you, that's you and your core values, that's positive and awesome? And what are some benefits to you of your perfectionism? And it turns out there's a lot of positives, and we emphasize those, as well as, is there a downside to the perfectionism? And let's balance those and see if this is something that you'd like to change. And if the patient doesn't want to change, that's cool. I'm not an evangelist. I'm more wanting to work with people who are suffering and wanting help. But once you've pinpointed these beliefs, there's some really neat techniques for changing them, and that's what we'll go over on February 28th. I would say that my list of 10 cognitive distortions, which has been plagiarized by so many people without giving me credit, I did create that list in my first book, Feeling Good, The New Mood Therapy. And I'll bet it's been used 100,000 times or more, maybe over 1 million times in websites and that type of thing. It's made a huge impact. People love my list of 10 distortions, like all or nothing thinking, but they also love the 23 self-defeating beliefs because they can identify with it. And it's not insulting to discover that the cause of your misery is your perfectionism. well, that's kind of prestigious. It's kind of cool to be a perfectionist. And so people like it. And when I was running the groups in the Stanford Hospital, I would often just give out the list of 23 self-defeating beliefs at the start of the group and have them circle the ones that they resonated with. And they loved it. And they love to talk about these things. We'll have a lot of fun on February 28th, going out all the methods to modify these things. But you can call them whatever you want, but your effectiveness will depend on your skill as a human being, your skill as a therapist, and not on the specific names that you use.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay, let's go on to Phil.
Okay, Phil.
Phil wrote, "Hi, Dr. Burns. First of all, I want to wish you and Rhonda a very happy new year. We're off to a rocky start, but things will get better soon. I loved the podcast on jealousy and anger, which was episode 223, as it really showcased a ton of team techniques and tools. I had a question that perhaps you'd be willing to answer. Is it necessary to write out the distortions on your daily mood log, or would you get the same benefit by just plowing through with positive thoughts, realizing that your negative thoughts contain loads of distortions? At least mine do. Obviously, writing down the distortions will certainly reinforce the fact that you can pinpoint the distortions at hand, but will it really make a difference either way?"
Great. Well, great question. And all of your questions, by the way, I think are cool. I love the Ask David episodes, I guess because I'm the center of attention. And as some of you have noticed, I tend to be narcissistic at times, which can really turn people off, and rightly so. But it's fun, and they're good questions. And at the beginning of therapy, I think it's really important to use the daily mood log and to write down your negative thoughts and identify the distortions on paper. There's a column on the daily mood log for that. They're printed on the page 2 of the daily mood log. They're in a box, all 10 distortions with quick quick descriptions of what is all or nothing thinking, what is emotional reasoning, what are should statements, and so forth. And because this is new to people for the first time, and you can't do it in your head, you'll just be like a snake eating its tail. You'll just be going around in circles, and one negative thought will lead to the next, and that will trigger another one, and pretty soon you'll be in emotional hell or an emotional blizzard. So I think writing them down one at a time and then using techniques to crush them. And in the new book, Feeling Great, you'll learn techniques to crush, the best techniques to crush all of the 10 distortions. And Rhonda, you and I did podcasts on this exact
Yes, we certainly
topic.
did. Well, doesn't Mark Noble say there's something very important about rewiring your brain if you write things down?
Yeah.
And you miss that if you don't write things down.
That's right. Now, all that being said, once you're really good at it and you've had your recovery and then you're feeling great most of the time, and sometimes you slip into little relapses when the negative thoughts come back, you might not need to write them down. Most of the time I don't anymore myself. Like I was jogging, I don't know if it was yesterday or what it was, but I was really feeling crappy. And I was thinking, man, the world is coming to an end, and this is going to go on forever. And my happy days are all in the past.
That's what you were thinking when you were jogging?
Yeah. I was thinking like, well, jogging, it doesn't have any mood elevating effects. It's just
for you.
Pain in the ass that I put up with. Some people like it, but I don't. But at any rate, then I just, because, my website was hacked, and I was overwhelmed and panicked and angry and confused. And then I just told myself, well, David, in 2 or 3 days, you're going to be happy and flying high again. And then I had the thought, no, David, that's bullshit. You can feel that you're hopeless. You can feel that this time you're going to be miserable forever. And then I said, there you go again, David. It's just
Do you ever
bullshit.
ask yourself, gee, what does this thought say about me that's positive and awesome? Or what's happening right now?
No, but I've gone through all of those steps. But now that's all I have to do. And then I just say, yeah, I know you're right. And then suddenly it's 2 or 3 days later, and I'm feeling as happy as can be. I was shocked and proud. I was able, with the help of the brilliant engineers at WordPress, to diagnose and eliminate the cause of the hack. And then I solved another problem because our podcast wasn't published yesterday. So I got panicked over that. And then I figured out how to solve that problem. And I just republished it today and it worked great. And so now I'm feeling really, happy and proud of myself. So to make a long story short, initially, you've got to write them down. And if you get real good at it and you know that your negative moods aren't going to last, you may not need to do it again. But it's always a powerful tool to have at your disposal if you're starting to get sunk into depression that looks like it's going to last a while. That's time to get out your daily mood log, write down your thoughts, identify the distortions, and use the techniques that work the best for you.
Cool. Okay, here's a quick answer. Here, quick question. A question with a quick answer. Nandini asks, "How do I get your decision-making tool?" And I'm going to expand that to say, "How do people get the two chapters that you're publishing for free that weren't included in the Feeling Great book?"
Well, the answer to this is a quickie. Mm-hmm. Go to my website homepage, and right there at the bottom, it says, "Click here for your free chapter on habits and addictions." And click there and you'll get it. And you'll get 2 free chapters, not just one. We promise one, we deliver 2. You just say, promise little and deliver more. And then on every page.
Because the second chapter is about how to make decisions, right?
Yeah, it's the decision-making tool. And then on every page I notice of my website, in the right thing, it says, click here for free chapter. So it's kind of hard to miss, and that's all you have to do to get it. And these are never published chapters because the book was too long. And this has been a very popular option. I think I saw yesterday that something like 6,000 or 7,000 people have downloaded those two chapters. Wow. And these are original, powerful tools for dealing with all kinds of habits and addictions: smoking, alcohol, overeating, procrastination, whatever ails you, you'll find powerful new techniques. It's not just a reworm in what you've learned from other people or see over and over again. When I create things, they're generally entirely original and often pretty radical and often pretty helpful. So go for it.
So David, are you ever going to take them off your website, or are they going to be there forever?
I don't have any plans to take them off. I mean, it's a lot of people are getting benefit from them, and I don't get any money from it or anything. It's just a public service. There's tons of free things. What we're doing now is free things for the general public. What you and I are doing, Rhonda. And that's one of my goals, is to deliver a lot of free things to people who can't afford it, people who are suffering.
Sweet. Okay, that was an easy answer. Here's a little bit more complicated one. A man from France asks, after listening to podcast 3, E equals empathy, does it make a difference? How do we empathize when the person we're having a conversation with does not feel comfortable sharing his or her feelings and thoughts, or does not know how to deal with them, or does not know how to deal when hearing them? Hi, Dr. Burns. Or shall I read the whole podcast? The question, or that's good enough?
That's maybe good enough there.
Yeah, that's good enough.
And I have an answer. If you have an answer or a thought on it, I would leave the door open for
Well,
that.
I kind of do what you did earlier, what you suggested about the cartoon. When somebody says, I just really don't know how I'm feeling, I say, well, can you pretend that you know? Like, just pretend in this moment that you do know. What can you pretend that you might be feeling? Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't work. And sometimes I say, well, can you imagine what somebody else who's in a similar situation as you, what that person might be feeling? And sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't work. So I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Okay, well, my answer is radically different.
I'm sure.
When people write to me with relationship problems, 99% of the time they're blaming someone else. And that's what this man from France is doing. He says, what do we do when the person we are having a conversation with does not feel comfortable sharing his or her feelings? You see, you're saying that person won't open up because he or she isn't comfortable sharing his or her feelings.
I guess I was thinking, I want to just backtrack. I was thinking, what if a patient said to me, I don't know what I'm feeling right now. That's
Yeah,
what
but
I would do.
that's a great answer you gave, but that's not what this man is asking.
But that's not what he's asking. So
No,
okay.
he's blaming someone else that he's interacting with who won't open up. Well, in the book Feeling Good Together, there's a chapter, how to communicate with someone who refuses to communicate. And you have to see what you're doing that forces the person not to share their feelings. How can you force other people not to share their feelings with you? It's real easy.
Criticize them, blame them.
Yeah, argue with them. Don't listen. Don't draw them out. And they do not know how to deal when hearing feelings. When you express your feelings, well, that's because you're expressing your feelings in a way that's ineffective and off-putting to the other person. The solution, like it or not, and if you don't like it, that's fine with me. But you create your own interpersonal reality at every moment of every day. Let's say you have someone who can't express their feelings. You might say, my gosh, I notice that you're not really sharing your feelings. There's some awkward tension in the air right now. And I'm feeling a bit ashamed myself because I'm asking myself, why would you have trouble opening up to me? And the one reason I can think of is maybe I haven't been a good listener. Maybe when you've tried to share your feelings, I've criticized you or argued with you or put you down. And if so, I can imagine that you're feeling anxious and hurt and angry. I'm wondering if any of this makes sense to you. I'm really sad because, I love you more than life itself, and I have to realize that I think I've probably let you down when you've tried to open up to me, and I'd love to hear if I'm on the right track. Something like that would be disarming because you're taking the blame for it rather than saying to the other person, oh, you don't know how to express your feelings. And it's just an art. It's an art form, but there's two aspects. One is learning how to do it because it isn't easy. It takes a lot of practice. But the other, it involves the death of your ego, the death of the self that the Buddha talked about, the great death. And if you want to learn more about it, you can read the book Feeling Good Together and do the exercises in there. And then we're going to have this Brian fellow who actually did that. And because he was having problems with his wife, he was angry. There was a lot of tension in their relationship, and he's going to come on the podcast and tell you how he turned all of that around. And I was amazed because it's hard for humans to give up these tendencies in our relationships with people that put people off and keep conflicts alive. We all get addicted to blaming the other person and seeing their faults and not wanting to look at our own.
What do you don't have any problem with saying things like, I feel embarrassed or I feel ashamed. And some people have said that makes them feel too vulnerable.
Yeah, it's all of these. It's how you do it, and you may be afraid of being vulnerable. Sometimes I feel afraid of being vulnerable. You don't want to open up and share your feelings, but it's how you do it. It's not whether you do it, but it's if you do it skillfully. If you say, "Oh, I'm feeling vulnerable right now because I'm screwed up and I'm such a loser and I don't know how to communicate and." Half of my patients have committed suicide and the other half have fired me and I'm really very inadequate. Well, it just irritate the hell out of people. Mm-hmm. But if you say, if a patient gives me a low grade on empathy, I might say I feel really sad and ashamed because your criticisms are correct. I did screw up and you mean the world to me. And at the same time, this can be a chance for us to develop a closer, better relationship and tell me what that was like for you. And I imagine you're feeling angry with me and hurt and lonely and disappointed. And it's painful to realize that, but I think this is a chance for us to really connect at a deeper level. Tell me what that's been like for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see? And then that's really showing admiration for the person, respect for the person. But you can share your feelings, and we'll have a podcast coming up on how to share your feelings effectively or dysfunctionally with Richard Lamb soon. And I know you, Rhonda, are excited about that. It's a huge topic.
Yep.
I know. Did that cover it on this one?
I think it did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I always wonder, will the message sink in? I think more than half the time the message doesn't sink in. People don't want to hear, sadly, that you're creating this problem you're blaming the other person for. It's not the popular message. It's not the number one bestseller message, I'm afraid. And, religions have been trying to say the same thing for hundreds of years, thousands of years. And people still don't get it. The Bible, like the Christian scriptures, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and I think the Hebrew scriptures too, but there's an emphasis on this in the Christian, which is what I was brought up in. It's like, don't take out the mote in the other person's eye and ignore the log in your own eye. It seems weird, like how could you get a log in your eye? But it's the thing, like, stop, noticing. It says, for when you blame others, you condemn yourself. That's another biblical expression. And these things are all very similar to the relationship therapy that we do, getting a patient to focus. What did the other person say? What did you say next? And then you can see that you didn't share your feelings, you didn't acknowledge their feelings, you didn't convey respect, and you can see how your response caused and triggered and accelerated the very problem you're complaining about. And when you see that, it hurts. It's painful, but it's liberating. And if you have the courage to do it, you can change your relationships with other people. But most people don't want to do that. They want to cling to crappy relationships, which are kind of addictive because you can feel powerful and morally superior and angry, and you can judge others and feel like you're right and they're wrong, etc.
Okay, that's great.
Was that okay?
That was great.
See, I can kind of vent on the podcast. That's why I like the podcast.
Yeah, I like it too. Because it's, I'm just thinking that it's really hard to accept that, for my response is creating a negative in somebody else. And then my response is creating them to respond to me in a negative way. It's much easier to say, you're a jerk, or you did something wrong, or, you forgot dinner.
Yeah, right. And then you can gossip with other people about what a loser the other person is. They can side with you, and you can kind of enjoy turning them into an enemy. And that's what the whole United States is doing right now. The political divide, and both sides are kind of hating each other and feeling certain that the other people on the other team are jerks, and we're the blessed ones. Right,
instead of seeing the commonality or taking responsibility.
As well as looking at what we're doing that is maybe turning them off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Thomas asked you, what would you say to a person who wants more ego strength?
Well, I would say Thomas is a really neat guy, and he's been emailing me for a long time, and I really admire him and give him all the support I can. He has great courage, and he's suffered and struggled with some pretty challenging circumstances. He also, I think, was once a patient of Albert Ellis years ago, and he loves and admires Ellis, and I always support Ellis too. As you know, I loved Albert Ellis. He was a kook, but a wonderful one and a brilliant one, and he contributed a lot. But Thomas's question is kind of very generalized and kind of philosophical. What do you say to someone who wants more ego strength? I would say, what time of day would you like it? Like, tell me a moment on a particular day when you, quote, didn't have good ego strength. Where were you? What time of day was it? Who were you interacting with? What were you thinking? What were you feeling? And then I would try to conceptualize, is this an individual mood problem with distorted negative thoughts, or is it a relationship problem involving conflicts with other people? Is it possibly a habit or addiction? One thing about TEAM, I keep everything at the 4th grade level. I don't use big words like ego strength and so forth.
Would you ask him, what do you mean by ego strength? What does that mean to you?
Well, no, because that would bring out more philosophizing. And then he would start quoting philosophers and Erich Fromm or various controversial writers who are also dealing in big words. Mm-hmm. But I would say, give me a specific moment when you were having this experience that you call not enough ego strength. Were you feeling sad? Were you feeling anxious? Where were you? What were you thinking? What was going on? See, I can only help people for one 5-second moment of their life. And it has to be a moment where something real and specific was happening. And then once they change their thoughts, they'll change the way once they crush the distorted thoughts, if it's an individual mood problem, then at that moment, their feelings will change. But exercises to boost ego strength, that's not on the menu today. We just have the blue plate special in our cafe. Mm-hmm. All I can offer you is rapid, irreversible euphoria. And if you want something involving...
That's all you can offer?
Yeah, if you want something involving big words, you have to go to someone who's a lot fancier than I am.
Okay. Well, okay, we know that. Okay, well, we've been on the podcast for about an hour, so maybe now would be a good time to say bye. And some of the other great questions that you have, we could ask at another time.
Thank you, Rhonda. It's always such a pleasure to work with you, and thank all of you for sending us all those cool questions. I just have a heck of a good time hanging out with you, Rhonda, and shooting the breeze about what people want answers to.
Yeah, and thank you. It's an honor for me to be here. And I just want to say that next week on our next podcast, we're going to be talking about some rarely used and some often used techniques.
Can you name a couple of them?
Yes, we're going to be talking about the anti-heckler technique
and
the anti-whiner technique and the anti-criticism technique.
Probably not the anti-criticism, because we've done that so much, the disarming technique, but the anti-whiner and the anti-heckler are cool techniques. And if you know somebody who whines and complains all the time, this is the podcast for you. You're going to love it, because we're going to give you the 100% cure for dealing with people who whine and complain. We'll show you how to respond to them, and how to transform them into sweet, loving lambs within 15 seconds, 100% of the time, no matter what. So
I can't wait for that.
Fasten your seatbelts, because it'll be a fun time in the old town tonight or next Tuesday, next time we record.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski, the director of the Feeling Great Therapy Center. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.